Hello, I'm old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and I'm 82 years old and taking a trike ride and telling a little bit more about my life story. and if you're interested in starting at the beginning, at the end of this video, there's a link that says life story. Click on that. It'll take you to a playlist of all the life stories. All right. Anyway, in my last video, let's see, what was I talking? Oh yeah, I was talking about an experience I had with my brother, and I interrupted a trail I had been following. So now, in this video, my son in Oregon, and by the way, his name is Mark. The son who I live with, his name is Bruce, okay? So my son Mark wanted to buy my airplane, my Cessna 170, and we made a deal. And so I was supposed to fly the plane down, and he'd get me a ticket to come home. But before that happened, excuse me, before that happened, there was a few weeks that went by. So he told me, come down and get the Harley Davidson, which was part of the trade. And it was a 1981, same model as I had when he was a kid. I had a 1980, and it's the same model. And so it's a Road King, and there goes the garbage truck. And so he bought it, and then it was rear-ended. He was sitting at a stoplight behind a car with a passenger on the back, and a guy came up behind him and rear-ended the motorcycle. And so nobody was hurt. But so then he rebuilt that motorcycle and repainted it and everything. In fact, it kind of looked just like the one I had when he was a kid. So that's the story of that motorcycle. And he also had a Honda Goldwing, which was really fancy, really nice one. And so anyway, so he said, you guys come on down and take it home with you. And then when the time comes to bring the plane down, I'll let you know. So my son Bruce and I, and he was a lot younger then. He's now in his 40s, and my older son is in his 60s, I guess you could say. Anyway, getting close anyway, in a couple more days, as a matter of fact. So we loaded up all the stuff we're going to need in my Jeep Cherokee and headed down to Aloha, Oregon, where my son lived down there. Pardon me. And we got a barking dog up here, so we'll see if it still works. So we loaded up and we went down. We left early in the morning and driving from Spokane, Washington, down to Oregon. And that's the only trouble with me riding in my neighborhood, is a lot of dogs. And so we got caught in traffic in Portland. And so we were going really slow, and my engine was overheating. And so as it turned out, the next day I replaced the radiator cap. That was the problem. So anyway, we stayed the night, and he had all the parts laid out. He had all the extra parts. Now he had it set up so it was kind of like a young guy's bike. Had extended forks, different seat, all kinds of stuff like that. So he took off. He had all the other stuff to go with it. Go around a bump here, and so he had that all laid out for us. And so we loaded up my Jeep with everything the night we got there and got it all ready to go. And next morning we went and got the gas cap, and then we headed back towards Spokane, Washington. But in one of the other things that we wanted to do was just stop at my brother's house near Centralia, Washington. He lived in Yelm, and so we wanted to stop there. So Mark, he showed us some back roads to get us some fun rides, and I'll tell you what, it was a blessing to my heart to ride behind my two sons riding on motorcycles, because as you know from my history, motorcycles were a big part of my life, and so having my two sons riding in front of me on motorcycles, that was a blessing. So anyway, we got to my brother's house, and as I remember, I could be wrong, but we visited for a while, and then Mark, he headed back to his house in Oregon, and I think we stayed the night at my brother's house, and then got up the next day and headed up to Spokane, and that's a 6-hour ride right there. So we got on the, I drove the Jeep. Well, actually, for a little while, I got to ride the bike, and he drove the Jeep. And then we pulled over, and he switched, and he took the bike, and I drove the Jeep, and we got to Spokane. Well, as it turned out, when we got there, my mother-in-law, my wife's mom, had fallen and broken her arm, and she lived in Lewiston, Idaho. And so as soon as we got home, we headed down there. Well, and then of course my son, he took his wife on the back, and they rode the Harley down to Lewiston, which was a fun ride. So anyway, I think we spent the night down there, and then the next day we came back with the motorcycle. So, and of course I didn't want that sporty look until later on, but at this point I wanted to be a nice bike that my wife and I could travel on and have some fun. So as soon as I could, I converted it back to putting the tour pack on the back and putting the larger wheel on the front and shorten the forks, and got it all fixed up so that my wife and I could take some trips. And in the next video, I'll tell you some stories about that. So anyway, so let me think, am I missing out on anything? So I got that fixed. Well, one of the other things that I did, now this was during the Iraq War, and when a soldier would be killed, they'd ship his body home, and then they would have a funeral. Well, of course, naturally, there were war protesters, and that was a real disturbing thing for somebody who just lost their son. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of called the Patriot Guard. And it was an organization that was formed by bikers. And so when there was going to be a funeral somewhere, well, then all the bikers would get together and go stand between the protesters and where the people were going in for the funeral and stuff like that. And so that way the protesters had very little effect on the family. So that's what the Patriot Guard was. Well, I can't remember how I got involved. A good friend of mine was part of it, I think is what it was, and he invited me to go to one of their rides where they stood with the flag. And so I said, yeah. It was up in Colville, Washington, which is up north of Spokane. Anyway, so we got on the bike, and everybody gathered at a spot, and then we all rode up as a group, and that was a lot of fun. And so when we got up there, Then I didn't have a flag, so that somebody gave me a flag. And later on, I bought me a flag to carry with me. But somebody gave me a flag, and I stood there, and I didn't move. Now, if you've been following my channel or my stories, you know I had a really bad wreck on my motorcycle years before. I was in the hospital for 18 days, and so there's some more friends of mine. And so I stood there and I didn't move for, I don't know how long it was. Had to be 45 minutes to an hour. And it was done in a military fashion. And so because these guys, most of the guys were vets. And so then the guy who was in charge said, dismissed. So then we put our flags down, or we didn't hold them straight up like we had been doing. And I started to take a step, and my knee was so locked up from standing there like that without moving, I never gave it any thought. I never gave it any thought that my knee was being... And so when I went to walk, it just didn't work, and I almost tipped over, and so I had to kind of limp around, trying to find the guy who gave me the flag. And so that was my first one, and I went on many. The sad part was some of the funerals were for the guys that came back and then they committed suicide because of the stress that they had seen and their buddies had died, and I guess that's the reason. I don't know, but there was just so much involved with it that they couldn't handle it when they got back. I'm gonna turn around here, getting down to the end of this road. And so not a lot, but many of the funerals were held where the young man had taken his life. One father that was talking to me, he said his son came out in the garage and he had hung himself. And he said that's the most peaceful look that we've seen on his face since he came back from Iraq. So it must have been pretty stressful for him. Anyway, so I did that, and I went to everyone I could. Some of them we had to drive half the day to get there, and then drive half the day to get back home. And one time we accompanied the body of a soldier from where the plane brought him in to a town south of Spokane where he was going to be buried, and so things like that. So they had these motorcycle guys, and we always rode in a good formation, and so it was kind of enjoyable doing that kind of stuff on my motorcycle. I did that for I don't know, a couple of years, and then I'll tell you this story, and then that's about all. So that, like I said, these guys were ex-military, and so I remember I was we were at the what do you call it? My mind just went blank. Where they bury people at the graveyard, and so yeah, I hear you. And so I couldn't stand at an angle because it hurt my leg. Well, when they lined us up, I ended up standing on an incline of a hill, and that wasn't good for my leg. So I was telling the guys, so the guys that were on the level spot, 90 degrees to where I was standing, they said, well, come on over and stand with us. And so I got out of my spot, went over and stood with them. And this guy that was, whoever was running it that day, he came up to me and he says, you do not change position without permission. Something like that. Scolded me. And then walked away, and the guys looked at me like, what a what a jerk, what the guy is. So anyway, I decided, I don't need this. I've been doing this for a long time, and that was some new guy or something. I don't know. So I rode with Patriot Guard until they started scolding me for donating my time, and I didn't ride with them anymore. But I still got a lot of rides in. Like I said, I think in my next video I'll tell you about a ride that my wife and I took that neither of us will ever forget. And we went all kinds of rides, but on that particular one, it scared us a lot. So for now, I'll just say thank you. Bump bump. I just say thank you for watching my videos, and God bless.